Cold air settles over the concrete floor. The bunker hallway is silent at first. Only the hum of a dying ventilation system breaks the stillness. A sheet of thin dust trembles on a metal doorframe as a distant rumble vibrates through the walls. Berlin is collapsing above, but down here, the sound feels strangely muted, as if the earth itself is trying to swallow the bunker whole. 2 guards stand motionless at their posts. A single gunshot cracks through the corridor. The sound is short, flat, absolute. From this moment on, nothing made sense again. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on April 30th, 1945, inside the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, witnesses hear what they believe to be a gunshot. Not loud, not echoing, more like a suppressed crack swallowed by reinforced walls. The timing comes from multiple testimonies: Johann Rattenhuber, Otto Günsche, Heinz Linge. Each places the moment within the same narrow window. Before the shot, Hitler had withdrawn into his private study with Eva Braun. He moved slowly, shoulders hunched, a tremor in his left hand growing more pronounced. His walk, once rigid and forceful, now looked uneven, almost dragged. He closed the door firmly behind him. Minutes earlier, he told his staff they would never see him alive again.
Du wirst mich nie wieder leben sehen.
This detail appears in several accounts, but each describes his tone differently. Some say he sounded calm, others remember him hollow. One claims he seemed panicked but trying to mask it. These discrepancies will matter later. According to Linge, no one was permitted near the study once the door shut. The staff waited in the corridor, some stiff, others quietly crying. A thick smell of exhaust and dust seeped through the bunker as Russian artillery struck closer, then the gunshot. A short silence follows in every report. No one reacts at first. The guards exchange looks but remain in position. Only when Günsche steps forward does the tension crack. He opens the door. The room is dim, lit only by a desk lamp struggling against intermittent power. Papers lie scattered across the rug. A map of Germany, riddled with red pins marking Soviet advances, hangs crooked on the wall. Hitler sits slumped on the sofa, a pistol in his right hand. Eva Braun lies beside him. According to post-war testimony, the smell of burned cordite is faint but present. But even in these earliest minutes, details already begin to fracture. Some accounts insist Hitler shot himself. Others maintain cyanide was the primary cause. A Soviet report later claims the body was too damaged to verify anything. One witness says he saw blood on the temple. Another swears there was almost no blood at all. The moment that should have brought clarity instead opens a labyrinth of contradictions. The bunker was a fortress built to outlast catastrophe. Deep beneath the ruined surface of Berlin, the concrete chambers felt permanently cold. Fluorescent lights flickered under low voltage. Water pooled in corners where pipes cracked from pressure. The air smelled of damp paper, old smoke, and the metallic tang of explosives stored nearby. By April 28th to 29th, the inner circle had contracted into a tight, exhausted web of individuals whose nerves were frayed beyond repair. Outside, artillery thundered like a constant heartbeat. Inside, the sound was filtered into a low, rumbling vibration, as if the bunker itself was breathing. Hitler spent most of those final 2 days shuffling between his conference room, his private quarters, and the narrow hallway leading to the emergency exits. Witnesses consistently describe his condition: trembling hands, rigid posture, slow movements. His once forceful voice weakened, breaking mid-sentence. He often stared at maps for long stretches without speaking. But contradictions creep in. Some aides claim he remained calm. Others insist he was emotionally collapsing. A few describe him as strangely detached, like a man already gone. Throughout April 29th, a series of events create a foundation of psychological volatility. He receives confirmation that Heinrich Himmler attempted to negotiate secretly with the Western Allies. Witnesses describe Hitler's reaction as explosive. He called it the worst betrayal of my life. His rage lasted less than an hour before fading into a defeated, hollow quiet. Then comes the news that Felix Steiner's counterattack, Hitler's last hope, never took place. He collapses into a chair and whispers that the war is lost. By nighttime, he signs his last will and political testament. Every person present reports his hands shaking so violently that ink smeared across the pages. Shortly after midnight, he marries Eva Braun in a small ceremony held in a bunker hall that still smelled faintly of exhaust from the generator room. A faint draft moved through the space each time someone opened a door, carrying the distant sound of explosions. This brief moment of ritual contrasts sharply with the collapsing world above. Then, at around 2:30 a.m., Hitler gathers his staff for a final farewell. The clock ticking on the wall becomes unusually loud in multiple accounts. The air feels dense. No one speaks unless spoken to. Every movement echoes unnaturally, as if amplified in the tight concrete chamber. At this point, contradictions begin to deepen. Some testimonies say Hitler thanked his staff with genuine emotion. Others claim he spoke mechanically, without looking anyone in the eye. One witness recalls a long pause, a moment where Hitler seemed to forget what he intended to say. By sunrise on April 30th, Berlin is encircled. The Soviets are within blocks. Inside the bunker, time feels suspended, stretched thin by dread. The stage is set for the final hours, but the evidence only gets stranger from here. The timeline for April 30th begins clearly in most records, but quickly splinters. At approximately 1 p.m., Hitler eats a modest meal: pasta, simple vegetable dishes, small portions. Some say he barely touched the food. Others claim he ate calmly, almost with routine. One aide recalls Eva Braun laughing softly at something, though no one remembers the joke. Then, a brief gap. Several minutes go unaccounted for in the most detailed testimonies. Soviet reports highlight this as suspicious. The gap is small, perhaps 10 minutes. But in a tightly observed bunker, any missing time becomes significant. During this gap, one witness reports Hitler was alone in his room. Another insists Eva never left his side. A third claims 2 guards stood in the hallway and saw no one pass. The contradictions multiply. When Hitler re-emerges, he indicates the moment has come. He shakes hands with staff, some of whom avoid eye contact. One aide later describes Hitler's hand as cold and damp. Another says warm and steady. A third says he does not remember touching him at all. At roughly 3 p.m., Hitler retreats to his private study with Eva Braun. Then, the most debated detail, a faint smell of bitter almonds. Some witnesses insist they smelled it, cyanide's signature. Others never mention it. Soviet documents later argue that no such smell was ever reported. These conflicts deepen the mystery surrounding the method of death. At around 3:30 p.m., the shot is heard. But even the sound fractures in testimony. Some say it was a sharp pistol crack. Others say it was a muffled pop. The Soviet investigation records only describe a single sound, source unknown. When Gunsche and Linge enter the room, the accounts diverge further. One claims Hitler sat upright. Another says he had collapsed sideways. A third suggests his body position must have changed during removal. Photographs would have resolved these contradictions, but none survive, and some sources suggest they never existed at all. The bodies are wrapped in blankets, carried upstairs, taken into the garden of the Reich Chancellery. But here, the evidence becomes even more fractured. One account says the bodies were doused with petrol and burned immediately. Another says they struggled to ignite due to ongoing shelling. A third insists the burning was interrupted and resumed hours later. And somewhere inside this chaos, a subtle question emerges. How can the most documented leader in modern history leave behind such uncertainty in his final moments? To understand why accounts conflict so sharply, we must examine the bunker environment in those final hours, a space shaped by exhaustion, fear, and collapsing structure. Lighting was erratic. Power flickered. Some sections dimmed unexpectedly. Others went fully dark for minutes at a time. A witness could easily miss a detail or invent its memory years later. Documents created under duress add to the tension. Orders were contradicted, rewritten, or ignored entirely. Paperwork vanished. Some files were destroyed intentionally during the evacuation of the chancellery. Others simply disappeared into the rubble above. Soviet forces, once inside Berlin, conducted interrogations that varied in pressure and methodology. Some testimonies appear consistent across individuals. Others change subtly depending on the interrogator, location, or time. One report mentions burn marks inconsistent with a simple outdoor cremation. Another finds no such irregularity. A third claims the soil sample suggests repeated burning events. We also face the problem of missing physical evidence. Hitler's pistol, lost. Fragments of bone, disputed in Soviet archives for decades. Teeth, eventually used for identification, but the original files were part of classified Soviet collections until the 1990s. Even the bunker layout complicates matters. Sound traveled unpredictably through angled corridors. A door left slightly ajar could alter an entire witness account of where the gunshot came from. Footsteps sounded amplified in certain passages, muted in others. Ventilation shafts carried odors from adjacent rooms, making sensory testimony unreliable. And there is the psychological factor. Every person in that bunker knew the world outside had collapsed. Food was scarce. Sleep was nearly impossible. The air tasted of smoke and damp concrete. Every distant explosion felt closer than the last. Under such conditions, memory becomes fragile. A detail seen in dim light becomes clear. A sound misheard becomes certain. A smell imagined becomes evidence. The deeper we dig, the more the layers of distortion reveal themselves. What remains is a mosaic of truth, half-truth, and uncertainty, shaped by fear, pressure, and the rapidly approaching end of Nazi Germany. But the most debated questions still lie ahead. Now we examine theories that originate from reputable, documented sources. Each theory exists in the historical record, some in official reports, others in academic research, and some in declassified Soviet files. Theory 1: suicide by gunshot and cyanide. Why it appears convincing. Multiple eyewitnesses describe Hitler holding a pistol. Cyanide capsules were tested earlier in the bunker on Hitler's dog, Blondie. Dental records match remains found near the chancellery. Contradictions. Some witnesses saw no blood. Others insist there was. Soviet reports describe burn damage too extensive for clear conclusions. A few aides deny smelling cyanide at all. Key weakness. Almost all physical evidence was destroyed or removed by Soviet forces, leaving the theory reliant primarily on testimony under stress. Theory 2: cyanide only. Why it appears convincing, certain accounts describe Hitler holding the pistol but not firing it. A Soviet autopsy report, heavily contested, claims no bullet wound was found, though this report is problematic and likely unreliable. Contradictions. Most eyewitnesses recall hearing a gunshot. Some testify explicitly to seeing a bullet wound. The autopsy report was inconsistent and possibly politically motivated. Theory 3: death by gunshot only. Why it appears convincing, the cyanide capsules were notoriously unreliable. One earlier test on a staff member destroyed the capsule before ingestion. A gunshot provides a clear and immediate cause of death. Contradictions. Witnesses mention the faint almond smell of cyanide. Hitler was paranoid about the capsules failing. Eva Braun almost certainly used cyanide, not a pistol. Theory 4: Soviet capture or escape. Why it exists. During the early months after the war, Soviet intelligence released contradictory statements, some claiming Hitler's body was found, others claiming he escaped. Stalin himself publicly suggested Hitler might be alive. Contradictions. No credible evidence supports escape. Witnesses in the bunker were consistent about his presence during the final hours. Soviet misdirection was likely political strategy, not genuine belief. After Hitler's death, the bunker shifts into frantic motion. Orders are whispered, papers are burned, doors slam as aides scramble to destroy documents. Footsteps echo sharply on concrete floors. Above ground, Soviet artillery strikes closer. The air fills with dust and electrical smoke. A faint wind blows across the garden as the bodies are burned. The Soviets reach the chancellery within hours. Their early reports are contradictory. Some documents describe bodies found, others describe none. Teeth become the only reliable identifier, verified decades later. Meanwhile, fragments of testimony drift outward through Europe. Some aides disappear into hiding, others are captured and interrogated. Many change details over time, intentionally or through fading memory. The bunker becomes a ghost site, sealed, flooded, forgotten, and eventually demolished. The rooms where the final decisions were made collapse into rubble. Dust settles over the place where one of history's darkest figures met his end. The contradictions remain. Was the gunshot loud or faint? Was there blood or almost none? Did cyanide kill him, or the pistol, or both? Were the bodies fully burned or only partially? Why do key testimonies conflict on essential details? And why did the most documented regime in modern history fail to produce a single uncontested piece of physical evidence? The corridor where the shot was heard no longer exists. The study where the final moment occurred has vanished. Only echoes and testimonies remain, fractured, incomplete, unsettled. And as we return to that single gunshot, the moment that should have brought closure, it becomes clear that the truth of those final 48 hours remains buried under layers of fear, rubble, and silence. The bunker is gone, the witnesses are gone, the documents are shattered across contradictory archives. All that lingers is the echo, the same echo that drifted down the dim hallway, just before everything collapsed, and no one could explain what happened next.